Look closely at her eyes. She almost never blinks. Her voice drops an octave to a deep baritone when she speaks to investors. She wears a uniform to project absolute focus, a black turtleneck deliberately copying Steve Jobs. She was going to be the next Steve Jobs. She was going to change the world. At 19 years old, she dropped out of Stanford. By 30, she was the youngest self-made female billionaire on the planet. Her company was valued at $9 billion. She had the most powerful men in the world eating out of the palm of her hand. Former Secretaries of State, 4-star generals, the absolute titans of American power. They all believed her. And yet, she was running one of the most ruthless and dangerous scams in modern history. Her name is Elizabeth Holmes, and her $9 billion empire was built on a lie so massive it put thousands of human lives directly in the crosshairs. Silicon Valley has always operated on a very specific religion. Move fast and break things. Fake it until you make it. It works when you're building a new photo sharing app or a food delivery service. If an app crashes, nobody dies. You push an update, write an apology blog post, and move on. Elizabeth Holmes took that exact same Silicon Valley mentality and applied it directly to human blood. The pitch was incredibly intoxicating. If you've ever had blood drawn, you know it's awful. A phlebotomist ties off your arm, sticks a large needle into your vein, and extracts vial after vial of deep red blood. Holmes promised a revolution, just one tiny prick of the finger, one single drop of blood into a small cartridge, which they called a nanotainer. That cartridge goes into a proprietary black box called the Edison. Within minutes, the Edison would run hundreds of complex medical tests. It would scan for cancer, detect HIV, check cholesterol, all from one tiny drop. It was the holy grail of healthcare, a trillion-dollar idea that would disrupt the entire medical industry overnight. But there was one massive problem right from the very beginning. The physics just did not work. Medical science relies on specific volumes of blood to accurately test for different biomarkers. You can't magically bend the laws of chemistry just because you wear a black turtleneck. Scientists within her own company knew it was impossible, but Holmes did not want to hear about chemistry. She wanted to hear about disruption. To sell the lie, she constructed a fortress of credibility. She did not recruit medical experts or seasoned bioengineers to her board of directors. If she had, they would have asked too many technical questions. Instead, she recruited political heavyweights. George Shultz, the former U.S. Secretary of State, Henry Kissinger, General James Mattis, David Boies, the most feared corporate lawyer in America. These men were titans of warfare and diplomacy, not medicine. When elite investors saw the board, their critical thinking completely turned off. If Henry Kissinger and George Shultz are backing a 19-year-old dropout, she must be a genius. The greed and the fear of missing out took over, and no one wanted to miss out on the next Apple. Hundreds of millions of dollars poured in, they gave her the money, and they gave her their complete trust. Instead of sprawling Theranos headquarters, a culture of absolute terror and toxic paranoia was taking hold. Elizabeth Holmes and her chief operating officer, Sunny Balwani, ran the company like a covert intelligence operation. Departments were physically separated, engineers were not allowed to talk to chemists, IT monitored every single email and keystroke. If you questioned the Edison technology, you were fired immediately and threatened with crippling lawsuits. Balwani prowled the office, intimidating young employees and demanding absolute loyalty. And what were they hiding in the secret basement laboratories behind bulletproof glass? The darkest secret in Silicon Valley. The Edison devices were essentially high-tech paperweights. They produced wild, erratic results. To cover this up, Holmes and Balwani executed an audacious fraud. They secretly bought off the shelf the commercially available blood analyzers made by companies like Siemens. But Siemens machines require large vials of blood, not tiny drops from a fingertip. So Theranos lab workers were instructed to take those tiny finger prick drops and dilute them. They mixed the blood with massive amounts of saline just to create enough volume to run through the commercial machines. It was scientific malpractice. Diluting blood changes the entire concentration of proteins and biomarkers. It completely destroyed the integrity of the test. When the results came out of the commercial machines, they were total fiction. But Theranos packaged those results behind slick digital interfaces and handed them to patients as confirmed medical science. Greed had completely blinded them to the reality of what they were doing. They were no longer faking a prototype to secure venture capital, they were actively gambling with human lives. In 2013, Theranos announced a massive partnership with Walgreens. They built beautiful wellness centers inside pharmacies across Arizona. The trap was sprung. Real ordinary people, pregnant women, the elderly, individuals with chronic illness started paying for Theranos tests out of pocket. The consequences were devastating and immediate. People received terrifying false positives for cancer, leading to immense psychological trauma and unnecessary medical procedures. Others received false negatives, meaning deadly conditions went completely ignored. There's a deeply disturbing disconnect here. While Holmes was gracing the covers of Forbes and Fortune magazines, while she was doing interviews with Bill Clinton and sitting on panels with Jack Ma, helpless people in Arizona were making life-altering medical decisions based on total fraud. She knew the machine didn't work, she knew the data was corrupted, but the $9 billion valuation and the intoxicating fame were simply too much to give up. The lie had to continue. But the pressure inside the pressure cooker was finally starting to crack. The truth was too big to bury, no matter how many terrifying lawyers David Boies deployed. The collapse started with a young employee named Tyler Shultz. He was a junior researcher, but he also happened to be the grandson of George Shultz, the legendary board member. Tyler saw the fraud firsthand. He saw the deleted data, the failed quality control runs, the secret Siemens machines. He tried to warn his grandfather, but the delusion was so deep that George Shultz sided with Elizabeth Holmes over his own grandson. Tyler refused to stay silent. Along with another brave whistleblower named Erica Chuang, he took an incredible personal risk. They began secretly speaking to an investigative journalist at the Wall Street Journal named John Carreyrou. Carreyrou was a seasoned reporter. He didn't just care about Silicon Valley hype, he cared about evidence. When he started digging, he found massive discrepancies. He found doctors whose patients had been misdiagnosed, he found the terrified former employees, and when Theranos found out Carreyrou was investigating, they unleashed pure corporate warfare. They threatened the whistleblowers, they threatened the journalists, they threatened the doctor who had voiced concerns. The sheer arrogance of the cover-up was breathtaking. Holmes genuinely believed she was untouchable. In October 2015, Carreyrou dropped the Bombshell article. The headline tore through Silicon Valley like an earthquake. It exposed the entire scam. It revealed the secret commercial machines, the diluted blood, the fabricated results, and the illusion completely shattered. Almost overnight, the golden child of the tech world became its greatest villain. The $9 billion valuation evaporated to zero. Walgreens severed the partnership, locking the doors on the wellness centers. Federal regulators swept in, banning Holmes from owning or operating a medical laboratory. The ultimate downfall was in motion. By 2018, the company officially dissolved, leaving behind a trail of ruined reputations and completely worthless stock. But the justice system wasn't done. Elizabeth Holmes and Sunny Balwani were indicted on massive charges of wire fraud and conspiracy. The trial forced the entire world to finally look past the unblinking stare and the deep voice. The emails and text messages presented in court ripped away the visionary facade, revealing two desperate executives lying to investors, lying to doctors, and lying to the world just to protect their wealth. In the end, the jury delivered their verdict. Guilty. Elizabeth Holmes, the woman who modeled herself after Steve Jobs and promised a medical revolution, was sentenced to over 11 years in federal prison. Her partner Sunny Balwani received an even harsher sentence of nearly 13 years. The Theranos saga remains the ultimate warning about the dark side of corporate ambition. It's a terrifying testament to what happens when the relentless pursuit of money and power collides with human fragility. A story where the line between brilliant visionary and dangerous criminal was erased completely by unimaginable greed.